And what a contrast in styles there is too.
Well, as we go a bit further down the field, one or two of the riders having difficulty getting through this little bit of a water ford.
And here's the fourth lady, Nicola Crowther. She was fourth in the heat yesterday, and I think she'll be happy with fourth again today because she admits the other three girls really are the best. And here's the situation behind the front runners. Chris Young leading Paul Hinton and Raymond Desaulnay, and Barry Clark was the fourth man of that group. Tim Davis trying to get on terms. Very good race then behind those three trendsetters. And it's been a long way already. The riders have now been on the course for about 45 minutes. And they'll complete this course in about an hour and a half. Here's a shot from our buggy, which is keeping up with the riders just as they're going by, because the speeds here, despite the hard surface and the stones and the dangers that lurk around every corner, they're probably riding here at around 25 miles an hour. Some can even smile even when you've lost your saddle, Paul.
Well, yes, that's one of the problems with mountain biking, but on this section, this kind of section now is why the mountain bikers are starting to use narrower tyres. They're coming down from the original 205 tyres to 1.65 on the front and a 1.75 inch on the back, because this is the kind of area where you get too much drag with the wider tyres and they need that speed.
He's closer, and this is the deep part now, the river here. It's a brave soul that crosses this. Closer carrying his bike in his right hand. Steve Dowse behind him. Fred Salmon getting a helping hand off the marshal there as he almost got swept away. These are the sort of skills that the normal cyclo-cross rider, the winter racing cyclist, doesn't really encounter, because water splashes such as this aren't allowed in cyclo-cross riding. It's only in mountain bike riding where they use all the natural terrain of the course. This is Desaulnay. The legs a little bit rubbery here. Chris Young in the middle and Barry Clark tucked in at the back.
Well, this is another part of the race where riders will get problems. As Paul Hinton said earlier, the muscles will be very warm at the moment, and going through an icy cold ford like this can cause problems like cramp.
I think it takes the breath away as well. Barry Clark throws the bike on the ground and away they go. And here's Tim Davis in the yellow jersey of his Smooth Cycles team. Wasn't too sure which way to go there. In fact, he doesn't look as though he's sure which way to go anyway. And Tim was the rider who said he had no fears of the course, but it looks as though Tim actually is struggling there. And this is Jason Shackleton, former juvenile British cyclo-cross champion. And so Shackleton continues on his way, well up the rankings. He's in 7th place at the moment on the course. And this is David Addyman, who's trying to chase Shackleton. And just look at this. He's trying to pick his own way, zigzagging through the water. Almost relieved to be out of that splash, I think. Into the next one, and on he goes. Tim Fluke's one of the top mountain bikers around the British Isles whenever he races. And he's still up amongst the leaders. Now let's have a look where we are. Down to the far right now, we've gone through the pine forest. We're heading out into open countryside and the next high spot on the course at around 1,000 feet. And this is the leader, Mike Closer, and he's beginning now to look like the world champion he was last year. He spent almost all of this season in Europe racing the World Cup Series, which has travelled around virtually every European country. And now Closer is beginning to feel a little bit freer, but he's having trouble in the woods here, Paul.
Yes, he's having a little bit of difficulty finding his way through, because with the rain that came down overnight, it's made this course very, very sticky and difficult. The riders' bikes are getting clogged up at certain times, and problems with the gears as well.
Well, let's have a look how far back. It's still not a long way. Steve Dowse is still challenging. This is the crowd now waiting at the next major point of the course. And it's the logs over the river. Now, the riders have been warned this morning they have to cross the logs. They can't go through the water unless there is a queue on the logs, which means they will be allowed to pass through the water because they will be delayed. But as you can see, these are the leaders. There's no queue, and so Closer has to go over the crossing of the fallen trees. There's Fred Salmon up in 2nd place now. Steve Dowse is approaching the logs. Salmon's making a very cautious crossing of this. I don't blame you, Fred. And this is Steve Dowse, and he looks to be making an even more cautious approach. In fact, it doesn't look to me as though Steve is enjoying this one little bit right now.
Well, he was a little bit worried this morning because he thinks he pulled a muscle yesterday, and possibly with the cold streams that he's been going through there. At the moment, you see Steve actually pressing on his leg. I think he might have a problem with his leg, the one that he injured yesterday.
Fifth man. Chris Young goes through in 4th place, so Barry Clark will be in 5th place. Silver medalist in the British Cyclocross Championships. He's ridden for Great Britain in a number of different sports this year because he's come into amateur road racing as well, and in fact won the King of the Mountains title in the International Milk Race, and that was a real achievement for Barry Clark this year. Raymond Desonnet, the man with the green legs, so you can't see him out in the woods. He's coming over the trees, and he is now in 7th place. And up behind him, I think that'll be Paul Hinton, who will be 8th at the moment. So all the men we expected. Paul Hinton, by the way, took up mountain biking after he became a delivery boy in the streets of London, riding a mountain bike. And he raced and he won, and he thought, this isn't bad, I'll have a go. Glad we're enjoying it now. They've walked a long way to get to this vantage point, Paul.
Yes, but this really is a tricky point on the course, and obviously people are waiting. It's a bit like watching the greasy plank, but I think a lot of the riders being very careful, don't want to fall off because it is dangerous.
There we are, top right now, moving on over that small climb, and now we're moving on the furthermost point of the course, right in the shadow of the Cairngorms, and then they'll start to swing towards the end of this first lap. And it looks to me, you know, Paul, as though Mike Closer is now getting the feel for this course. He hadn't seen it, and now he's beginning to feel he can start to push the pace a little bit.
Well, he's looking a lot more comfortable now. You can see how damp it is overnight with the rain, and Closer really is flying around here. But it's on the second lap when they when the pain is going to start to tell.
That was Fred Salmon rushing through. Chris Young has been gaining steadily all of the time. He has a reputation in cyclo-cross riding to make a bad start and then eat his way up towards the leaders. Well, this is Hinton, who's closed up now into 4th place, chasing Chris Young. And behind Hinton, we're going to see come into our view here Jason Shackleton. Shackleton, only a youngster, winner of the Juvenile Cyclo-Cross Championship a couple of years ago, and he's now developing nicely. Wresting the machine down over the mud there, locking up the back wheel with Dave Adiman. This is Steve Dowse, who's fallen back now a long way. And Alistair Martin from Northern Ireland is making steady progress up towards the leaders as well. But Steve Dowse has to be the talking point, Paul. He's obviously in a little bit of trouble.
Well, I think he is having problems with that leg of his. Obviously, the problem with the hot muscles, immersing them in the cold water, and possibly a muscle pull yesterday. But down on the road here, Fred Salmon on the faster section is coming back up to Closer to join the leader.
Well, this has been a great fight back by Fred. He's been in 1 or 2 problems at the back, but he's coming back up to Mike. He's without his 2 top teammates, Dave Baker and Tim Gould, 2 of his teammates he relies heavily on for these sort of races. They're not here. In fact, they're racing in America. And Fred is doing his best to fly the flag, and he's doing a darn good job at it too. He's joined the leader as we go across the river yet again. The rivers, by the way, apart from the big one, the River Spey, all the tributaries are rushing around the estate in every direction, and the riders must at times begin to wonder where they are. Fred has taken a close line then on Mike Closer. Closer has been setting the pace almost since, well, I reckon about 5 kilometres after the start he managed to get into the lead. And he stayed there ever since, but now we're on to the finishing arena, and Fred Salmon is going to get the glory first man through at the end of the opening lap. So Salmon will come through first. Mike Closer is in 2nd place, riding up there with his hands off as he's getting ready to change, I think, his drinking bottles. Yes, he is. Off they go. And then grab a new... He's missed that, in fact. And Fred's not going to wait. I don't blame him. Fred Salmon didn't miss his, and Fred has a slight lead now. They're heading out now, of course, over the zigzags here in the finishing area. Then we're out, and they've got to face the climb again up the Ode Barn.
Impressive rider for Fred Salmon, actually. He started riding a bike only 3 years ago when he smashed his leg in a motocross accident.
And now we're looking back to the finishing line. This is the situation then with 1 full circuit to go. Fred Salmon just ahead of Mike Closer, and Chris Young really coming back into the picture now in 3rd place. Gone from the picture, sadly, Steve Dowse,